Hey guys, we're going to spend a couple minutes reviewing some of the skills that we've learned with fractions. I'm going to go kind of fast, so remember that you can pause this video anytime you need to stop and regroup yourself. So first thing we're going to talk about is what exactly is a fraction. So if we start with the fraction of 1/4, 1/4 has a numerator and a denominator. The denominator is probably the most important part. That tells you how many pieces the whole object has been cut into. So if we have a denominator of 4, that means my cookie has been cut into 4 pieces. If I have only one out of those 4 pieces, that means I have eaten 1/4. So numerator tells you how many parts you're using. Denominator tells you how many parts in the whole. We learned how to use multiplication and division to make equivalent fractions. So here's a quick example of multiplication. If I want to find a fraction that is equal to 1/4, I multiply the top and bottom, the numerator and denominator, by the same number. Remember, whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. Whatever you do to the top, you do to the bottom. So in my numerator, 1 times 2 is 2. In my denominator, 4 times 2 is 8. So that tells me 1/4 and 2/8 are equivalent. You can also do the same thing with division. Remember, whatever you do to the top, you do to the bottom. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. In my numerator, 10 divided by 2 is 5. In my denominator, 12 divided by 2 is 6. So 10/12 and 5/6 are equivalent. We then started comparing fractions. So let's say, for example, I want to compare 2/6 and 4/5. The first way that we learn to do that is with what we call benchmark fractions. So over here with 6, I know 3/6 is close to half. So 2/6 is a little less than half. I know 4/5 is close to 1/2. So here I have less than 1/2. Here I have almost 1/2. So that's going to make 4/5 bigger. You can also do the same thing using what we call the butterfly method. This is where you make your butterfly wings, multiply the numbers that you've circled, write their product on the top. Over here, I got 24 at the top, which makes 4/5 the larger fraction. We then added and subtracted fractions. Pretty simple. Your denominator is not going to change. You just add the numerator. Same thing with subtraction. Your denominator is not going to change. You just subtract the numerators. We then got into adding and subtracting mixed numbers. So for example, if we are adding 1 and 2/4 plus 2 and 2/4, we add the fractions, that gives me 4/4. We add the whole numbers, that gives me 3, but you'll also notice 4/4 is the same as 1/2, so that gives me the final answer of 4. In subtraction, let's reverse those numbers, 2 and 2/4, and let's take away 1 and 2/4. 2/4 minus 2/4 is 0/4. 2 minus 1 is 1, so my final answer is just 1. The only time subtraction is going to get tricky is if you have to regroup. So you'll see here 1/4 and 3/4 I can't easily subtract, so I'm going to have to do some regrouping. So I'm going to take one of these wholes away and break it apart into 4/4 plus the 1/4 that I already had. So I'm turning that into 2 and 5/4. I know this is an improper fraction, but I need that to be able to do my subtraction. So now I finish my subtraction by bringing this all the way over. 5/4 take away 3/4 gives me 2/4. 2 take away 2 is 0. You don't have to write the 0, but I'm going to. And I also know that 2/4 is equivalent to 1/2. So just a quick review of some of our fraction skills.